Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
You can access the Vendors page by clicking the Vendors link in the navigation bar. On this page, you will be able to view all of the vendors that service your company. At the top of the page, on the right-hand side, you will see two buttons. The first is a Prepare 1099s button that, when clicked, will open a new page where you can create 1099s for your vendors if needed. The second is a drop-down button labeled New Vendor. The second option in the drop-down button is Import Vendors. The first item to address will be adding new vendors to your company file. Click the New Vendor option in the drop-down button to open a vendor information menu. Here you will enter all of the information about the vendor that you are adding. The first option is to add a title, first name, middle name, last name, and suffix for your vendor if applicable. To the right is an email field where you can enter the email address for the vendor if you have it. Next is a company field where you can enter the company name for your vendor. To the right of the company field are three fields for phone, mobile, and fax numbers. Below the company field is a drop-down list to select how you would like to display the vendor's name as in your lists and on transaction forms. To the right of the Display Name As drop-down list are two fields. The first is Other, for adding another telephone number if available, and the second is Website, for entering a website address for the vendor if available. Below the Display Name As drop-down list is a checkbox to use display name to print on checks as. If you would like to use a different display name when printing checks, you can uncheck the checkbox and enter the name that you want printed on checks into the field directly below the checkbox. To the right of the Print on Checks As checkbox are two fields. The first is a billing rate per hour, where you can enter a billing rate for this vendor when applicable. The next field is a drop-down list where you will enter the payment terms for this vendor. For example, net 30. If you do not have vendor payment terms created yet, you can leave this field blank. Alternatively, you can select Add New from the drop-down list and create payment terms for this vendor. The next section on the left-hand side is an address section. Enter the vendor address into these fields. Also note that there is an adjacent map link that, when clicked, will open a new page and display the address that you entered within an online map. To the right of the address section are four fields. If you are entering a vendor to whom you owed money as of the start date of your company file, then enter the amount that you owed and the start date of your company file into the opening balance and as of fields. For vendor records that you create after starting your company file, you will leave these two fields blank, as the amounts that you owe to these vendors will be recorded by the bills that you then enter to track your payables. Below these two fields is an account number field. If you have an account number with your vendor, you can enter that information here. The last field in this section is a tax ID field. Enter the vendor's tax ID into this area if needed. A checkbox for Track Payments for 1099 is below the tax ID field. You can check this if you need to create 1099s for your vendors. The final field on this menu is a Notes field. Here you can enter any notes that you have for this vendor. When you've completed your entries, click the Save button to close the menu and return to the vendor's page. If you need to edit the information for a vendor, simply click the vendor name to open a page listing the vendor's information and any transactions they have been a part of. Click the Edit button next to the vendor name to open the vendor information menu. Edit or change any information as needed, and once again, click the Save button to save and close the menu. To make a vendor with a zero balance inactive, select Make Inactive from the Action column on the vendor's page. This is QuickBooks Online Plus's version of deleting a vendor. To reactivate an inactive vendor, select Include Inactive from the small gear icon above the vendor's list. In the Action column, select Make Active, and your vendor will be reactivated. Below the Prepare 1099s and New Vendor buttons at the top of the vendor's page is a money bar that will display from left to right unbilled purchase orders, unpaid open bills, overdue, and paid items. Clicking on any portion of the money bar will filter your vendor list to show only the vendors with that type of transaction. You can click the Clear Filter / View All link above the money bar to remove the filter. At the bottom of the money bar on the right-hand side is a small arrow that will collapse or expand the money bar. Below the money bar are two drop-down buttons and a text box. The first button is a Batch Actions button, which contains an option for email that will allow you to batch email any of the vendors that you select from the list. The second button will allow you to choose how your list is sorted. The default option is Sort by Name. The other options are Sort by Company and Sort by Open Balance. The text box will allow you to search for a specific vendor from the list to display only that company within the list. On the same line, at the right-hand side of the screen, you will find three icons: the print icon, the export to Excel icon, and a gear icon. The print icon, when clicked, will open a page that will display your vendor list. Your computer's print dialog box will be automatically opened as well. Clicking the Export to Excel icon will open a download dialog box that will allow you to download your vendor list as an Excel spreadsheet. The final icon, the gear, is used to control the display of your vendor list. There are three sections in the gear. The first section, Columns, gives you the options of address and email that will add or remove those columns from the list. The email option is selected by default. Next is Other, with the option to include inactive vendors within the list display. Finally, the Rows section allows you to decide how many rows are displayed on the page. There are three options contained in the drop-down button. They are 50 items, 150 items, or 300 items. The vendors list has four default columns. They are Vendor, Email, Open Balance, and Action. The Vendor column will show the name of the vendor. The vendor name is a clickable link that will take you to the information page for that vendor. The email column contains the email address of the vendor if there is one. The open balance column displays the current open balance due to the vendor. The final column, the action column, displays a drop-down box that will allow you to choose an action to perform. The options in the drop-down box are Create Bill, Create Expense, Write Check, Create Purchase Order, and Make Inactive. With the exception of the Make Inactive selection, each option, when clicked, will take you to the page to create that item. Note that the Make Inactive option will display a pop-up box that asks you to confirm if you want to make that vendor inactive. You can click Yes if you want to make it inactive, or click No to cancel and close the pop-up box. Below the list, on the right-hand side, you will see First, Previous, Next, and Last. These are the controls that you would use to navigate through multiple pages of the vendor list if required.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.